What's up, folks? Derick G from the Bloody Water Podcast here. Just wanted to do a quick breakdown for the UFC Louisville. Not our normal show, as you can tell here, but it's just going to be kind of rapid fire style. I'm going to go through my picks. I'm going to go through a couple of props, all that fun stuff, and just give you a little context behind the picks that we've already dropped on our community tab. So if you haven't checked it out, of course, go run that. We got the plays ready for you. The first bout, of course, that we're going to open ourselves up with here is going to be Jared Cannonier versus Nassourdine Imavov. So ultimately, folks, this is kind of the reasoning behind why we have Jared Cannonier, why I have Jared Cannonier. He is not a consensus pick, but this is one that I am rolling with here versus Nassourdine Imavov. If you look at this on paper, you might want to roll with Imavov, right? 6'3", 75-inch reach, 29 years old. Like, he's a young stud. That's very clear. And coming off of that last fight that he had against Roman Dolidze, you're probably pretty impressed. But I think Jared Cannonier, even though he is 40 years old, though albeit a very fantastic, in-shape 40-year-old, I think Jared Cannonier is the more tested veteran. He's fought the higher caliber opponents, and his style of fighting over a 5-round fight, I think, is going to lend to wearing down Nassourdine Imavov over the long run. We've seen Imavov already deal with a couple cardio issues. So I kind of think that Jared Cannonier, he's going to be taking that Sean Strickland approach almost, where he's going to stay on the front foot. He's going to keep backing him down. As long as he can keep up the volume like he has in his last couple of fights, I can definitely see him using his experience, his veteran poise to take this fight to where it needs to be, get him in the trenches, and ultimately come out the victor. I do think this is a fight that's going to go to decision. Not really worried about Nassourdine Imavov attempting to try to grapple and use that to his advantage, because if he does, I could see him gassing out, which then lends to the favor of Jared Cannonier. So as you can see it right now, plus 100 for Cannonier, minus 120 for Imavov. This might close as a pick'em. Who knows come actual fight night, which is on Saturday. We're recording this on Thursday. But the point is that the point is clear. Jared Cannonier, I think it's a pretty simple play at live plus money right here. So I'm going to roll with the killer gorilla, Jared Cannonier. He's trying to right the wrongs. He's trying to be a gatekeeper. And if you look at the middleweight division right now, there's not a lot of fighters who are going to be able to overcome him. So with that being said, Jared Cannonier, that is the pick right there. All right, moving on along. Let's roll up to the next bout. Okay, so this is a really interesting one right here, because on one hand, you have Dominic Reyes, right? The destroyer Dominic Reyes versus Dustin Jacoby. And this is a fight of two fighters who aren't really in incredible form. If you're looking at Dominic Reyes, you're looking at a man who hasn't won a lot of his most recent fights. He's 34 years old. Jacoby, I mean, you can't really make an argument that he's got this crazy advantage. He's a 36-year-old. I kind of view both of these fighters as journeymen in the UFC, even though Dominic Reyes, with that name, he's kind of fallen from grace a little bit. The point is this. Dominic Reyes, chin questionable. We know Dustin Jacoby, he's going to be using his Muay Thai. He's going to try to find the clinch, might even try to clinch him up and use him up, get Dominic Reyes up against the cage. I just think that he's going to be a little bit more active of a fighter. I think he's going to be able to have some of those bigger moments. And I think Dominic Reyes, who's really appearing to kind of chase that win, chase that past glory, I think that's the trappings that you kind of find yourself in with Dustin Jacoby. Now, this is a tough one because, again, neither fighter are coming in fantastic form. So I would say in consensus general, if we didn't have a competition that we run at the Bloody Water Podcast, to me, this is actually a stay away. Minus 235 for Dustin Jacoby, that's not particularly a price that I want to pay right here. I think that's pretty high against a name like Dominic Reyes. But then again, a lot of people are very confident that he's able to get the job done, land the knockout. I'm a little bit more interested in an over type situation right here, but I really am staying away from this one. I'm rolling with Dustin Jacoby just because I don't feel confident enough to take Dominic Reyes as a flyer. If you look at all his highlights, if you look at his best performances, it's many, many moons ago, really, at this point. So the play, it's pretty clear, Dustin Jacoby, and that's a consensus pick right here. I just would not be surprised, given the question marks around this matchup. I wouldn't be surprised if we ultimately did see that live dog come to play in Dominic Reyes right there. So not super confident in the Dustin Jacoby pick. It's a stay away on normal terms for me, but for the sake of the competition that we're running, we're rolling consensus Dustin Jacoby. Next up, this is actually one that if you go check out one of our old videos, we've already broken down this fight. Raul Rosas Jr. versus Ricky Turcios. And the only difference here is that I actually picked Ricky Turcios the first time around before the fight got scrapped. Now, technically, we got the dub, right? Rosas, he was unable to fight. He pulled out of the fight. So Turcios got the dub. Like, that's the street rules right there. But when it comes down to it, we know Tercios is this eccentric figure, right? We know that he's got some interesting striking. He's down for a brawl. His jiu-jitsu is pretty sick. But Raul Rosas does one thing, and he does it really, really good. And his ability to grapple, as long as his gas tank holds up, is going to probably put Tercios in a tough spot. So the reality is, this is what I kind of envision in my head this second go around. I think Raul Rosas Jr. is able to get to the back somehow, some way, win rounds with control, and maybe once he starts getting tired in that round 3-ish type scenario right there, because I do think that this is another fight that goes the distance if Rosas can't get an early choke, then I imagine that Ricky Tercios is one of those fights where it's like, if this was a fight to the death, Tercios wins, but because of the control time that was racked up, submission attempts, all that stuff, I think that's what's going to lend to a Raul Rosas victory right here. He's young. Tercios, he's the tough winner. He's showed grit, he showed poise, but still, if you look at the people that he has fought, neither fighter have really fought anybody too incredible. And Rosas rolling with the youth, rolling with the dude who does one thing really, really good. That's the guy that I'm willing to pay the price for. Again, minus 235, not quite a ticket price that I'm willing to pay. Ricky Tercios at live dog odds at plus 190. I like that. I don't think that's bad at all. But again, right here, I think Rosas Jr. is the pick. So if I'm going to actually roll with something, if I was encouraging you, hey, we're going to roll the dice and we're going to bet heavy here, we're rolling with the over here. I think that this fight definitely can go to a decision. But again, if you're not happy with that and you feel comfortable with the minus 235 Rosas play, then that's the one that you should definitely run. But that is another Bloody Water Podcast consensus pick. All right. As we move on to Bruno Ferreira versus Dustin Stoltzfus, I don't want you guys to fall into the trappings that a lot of people do when it comes down to somebody coming off of a big victory against an opponent who's a similar build and then automatically rolling with, oh yeah, Stoltzfus should get the victory because look at what he did to Punahele Soriano. I was a believer in Dustin Stoltzfus just because I believed in the wrestling, but we've seen he's not always a quick starter. He's actually admitted in interviews before that he gets a little bit nervous, a little tense. His footwork isn't where it needs to be at the start of most fights. So if you have a slow start against Bruno Ferreira and you can't withstand the power the way that he did to Punahele Soriano, I definitely think Ferreira is going to be a little bit too... He's going to be overmatched, meaning that Stoltzfus will be overmatched. Ferreira is just too physical of a specimen. The way that he strikes, punches, and bunches, it's not one shot at a time the way that Puna was throwing it. I believe in Puna. I thought it was a bad night at the office. Maybe something happened. He just didn't quite show up the way that I think people were expecting. But Dustin Stoltzfus, the thing that was the most impressive was it took him a while to actually get to his game, which is the ground game. That's like the bread and butter for him right there. But he held his own in the striking department. Not sure if he could do the same against Bruno Ferreira. Notorious for those first round knockouts right there. Things get interesting if we could push this to round 2 and round 3, but really, I'm not sure if we're going to get there. Minus 270 for Bruno Ferreira. Again, a ticket price that I think is a little high. It's a little high just for the scenario, but I think it's because the odds makers are pretty confident that a knockout is going to happen here. So what I would say, again, for the betting folks out there who want to throw a little something on here, Bruno Ferreira, I like the knockout. I think that he can totally get the job done, and if I had to bet this like 8 out of 10 times, I'd say knockout all day long. There is that chance of Dustin Stoltzfus, unfortunately, putting himself in a position to where he can right the wrongs, man. He could build on his streak against Puna. This is a similar build. Bruno Ferreira switches into southpaw a lot too, so it's like very, very similar to the Puna fight, but it's definitely something that we should keep our eyes on. So the play, again, right here, this is Bruno Ferreira. I'm looking at the knockout, and I'm looking for him to get it done in the first round or 2. All right, now we're back to the Cuban Missile Crisis. I haven't pulled him up on the screen yet. Let me go ahead and get him up there. Julian Marquez versus Zach Reese right here. So this is a really interesting one because I think that there's a lot of things about Zach Reese that would make you want to say, maybe this is the guy. Maybe this is the guy that gets it done. Marquez, he hasn't been in standout form as of late, but Zach Reese is he's a jiu-jitsu fighter. Dude's tall, he's long, he's lanky. His guard is pretty sick. It's pretty nasty, but let's not forget, Julian Marquez, he's got some submissions as well, right? More importantly, he's the Cuban Missile Crisis for a reason. This dude cracks, man. And Julian Marquez, if you can't get the takedown on him quick and easy, and given that you're a jiu-jitsu style in Zach Reese, that doesn't mean that you're a fantastic wrestler. That doesn't mean you can get the fight to the mat at any given time. It just means that when the fight does get to the mat, you probably have an advantage. But Julian Marquez right here, I think as long as he keeps on the front foot, he doesn't overextend himself, and he doesn't put himself in a position where his back is flat on the mat, or Even staying in the guard of Zach Reese with those long limbs, we're looking for triangles, arm bars, omoplatas, all the fun stuff. I think that Julian Marquez, if he can avoid those situations, this is a knockout fight right here. In terms of minus 135 for Marquez, I think that that's actually a nice value to have, because if you look at the opening odds, Zach Reese was the favorite at open. Now the line has flipped for Julian Marquez. Again, none of these fighters on this this UFC Louisville card are particularly in fantastic form, but I do think that you have to believe in the experience of Julian Marquez, the guys that he's fought. Zach Reese, he just got slammed on his head by Cody Brundage. When they fought, Brundage was kind of able to land at will, and if Marquez lands half of what Brundage landed, I think we're seeing a knockout right here. So minus 135 for Julian Marquez. We're hoping all things go right here, because this is the sport of MMA, and we don't know nothing, but in the grand scheme of things, another Bloody Water Podcast consensus pick, Julian Marquez. I actually like this one. I was a little uncertain, and I kind of wanted to go Zach Reese when I was first breaking down film, but after breaking down the film, it was clear to me that Julian Marquez, as long as everything goes correctly, this should be a very, very easy play right here. All right, and to open us up, folks, Miguel Baeza versus Puna Heli Soriano. So I was just talking about Puna, right? In this fight, what was the fight that we were just talking about? Against Dustin Stoltzfus, right? So again, two fighters not in great form, and I hate to continue to repeat this time and time again, but look at Miguel Baeza. After the Santiago Ponzinibbio loss, things have been a little bit weird for him, right? Baeza hasn't fought in about 2 years. Puna is just kind of not finding his groove. He's really looking for that get-right fight, and I think that this is actually a get-right fight. This is a get-right fight for Baeza as opposed to Puna Heli Soriano. But this is really what my thought process on this fight was. It's very simple. Baeza, minus 190 favorite. I think that has shrunk down from the open, so it's getting a little bit closer when we're looking at the odds. But the thing that really concerns me here is just the chin of Baeza. If Soriano could touch him, then it's going to be problems. But we're noticing Soriano doesn't have the greatest output these days. Gas tank isn't lasting very long. And oh, by the way, I didn't mention it, Soriano's dropping down to 170 pounds. So what is that weight cut going to do? If you only had a round of gas at 185, what's going to happen at 170? Again, I want to preface, I believe in Puna Heli Soriano. I think this dude is legit. He's a Vegas guy. This dude wrestles fantastically. He has bombs in his hands. But Miguel Baeza, the length, 6'2", 74.5-inch reach. I think he's going to put himself in a position where he's going to be able to land those straight shots down the pipe and keep Puna Heli in front of that stick, meaning he's using that get off me stick right there, that jab, and bringing that right hand down the pipe, and I think that that's going to bring success for Miguel Baeza. So as long as Baeza can shake off some of the cobwebs in time to not get smacked by a big shot from Puna Heli Soriano, I think that he should get the job done right here. You look at the age, both similar. Southpaw stance for Soriano. Again, you just can't get clipped. So Miguel Baeza, that's the pick. All right, folks, that was a very rapid fire, not a conventional Bloody Water Podcast episode right here. But again, I wanted to give you guys just a little bit of context. Not the most in-depth breakdown, but to go over and recap our picks. I'm tailing, or if you're tailing me, you're rolling with Jared, the Killer Gorilla Cannonier. If you're rolling with my boy AJ, you're rolling with Nassourdine Imavov. All of the remaining picks are Bloody Water Podcast consensus picks: Dustin Jacoby, Raul Rosas Jr., Bruno Faeda, Julian Marquez, and Miguel Baeza. So the theme this week, I know AJ normally takes it, but the theme this week is definitely chalk, and we're hoping that we get the job done here, hoping we see a lot of finishes at UFC Louisville. But last couple of things that I wanted to note that I like just for a couple of plays for myself. So one play I really, really enjoy right here. 2.5 rounds for John Castaneda and Daniel Marcos right here. Marcos is the undefeated fighter. John Castaneda, I have big, big hopes, and I think that this dude is really, really legit. I'm just not sure if he's going to be able to pull it all together on a consistent level. 21-6. He's done it much more than he hasn't done it. But again, this is really the point that I'm making. I'm not going on a pick here as opposed to going on that over 2.5 rounds, which we're currently tracking at minus 245. Steep, hefty price to pay. But if we parlay it together, I think we're going to put ourselves in a fantastic spot. So the parlay that we have is Castaneda versus Daniel Marcos over 2.5 rounds, and we're going to parlay that together with Cody Stamann. Let's pull it up. Cody Stamann versus Taylor Lapilus, and that's over 2.5 rounds at minus 350. Chalk, I'm telling you, it's super chalk, but you combine them together and then we get some nice odds. We get down to about 120, minus 123-ish or so. So that's a really good parlay that I would like to run right here. It's a Bloody Water Podcast parlay. And then finally, I do have a prop, and I'm cheating. It's not particularly a prop, but I got a dog lock for you guys. I'm super, super confident in this one just because if you look at Denise Gomes, man, she came in as an absolute crusher. And what I mean by that is that she is starching all of the people that she's coming across. If you look at Eduarda Moura on the other side, she is huge for 115 pounds. She didn't make weight in her last fight, but then again, she fought Conejo Ruiz, Montserrat Conejo. So that's not something that you're writing home about. That's not something you particularly get excited about. Conejo is already an undersized 115 pounder. So at least you're fighting someone who's still undersized, Denise Gomes, but packs a lot of pop in her shot. So if she could land, it's going to be a problem. Now, before I go back to the page, you're just going to look at the Eduarda Moura fight. And actually, you know what's a better indication? Let's go ahead and let's pull up the Tapology page right here. Because when I pull up the Tapology page, what you're going to see from Moura is you're going to see the undefeated fighter, of course, which looks fantastic. But this is what we're going to see. These are the records against the opponents that she's fought, right? Nothing to write home about. Look at that. She's knocking everybody out. She's submitting them. Her ground game is really the key. Denise Gomes gave up takedowns to Angela Hill. That's really concerning. But I definitely think that after that first round, especially with the big weight cut from Moura, where's the gas tank looking at? And if in the second and third round, Denise Gomes could step on the gas and avoid the takedown, I think she gets a knockout. I think she gets a finish for real. So again, what you're seeing here is you're seeing don't want to be rude, can crusher type resume right here. You're seeing a heavy regional scene getting into the UFC, making a big mark in your first fight, but can you keep it up once you get against a couple of those tougher matchups? So again, just take a look at these records here. Nothing to write home about. And you look at Denise Gomes on the other end. Yeah, you lost to Angela Hill. You got heel hooked in a grappling match that just happened, whatever. But she knocked out Yasmin Hadagi. She just stepped on the gas, got the job done. Knocked out Bruna Brazil. Fantastic right there. You lost to a grappler in Loma, and then you lost to a very tenured veteran in Angela Hill. Aside from that, man, she's got some grappling wins. She's got knockouts, decisions. She don't got a lot on her resume, but the point is very clear. I think Denise Gomes is a absolute dog lock right there. So that's UFC Louisville in a nutshell, folks. Remember that when we're betting on decisions and we're betting on fighters for decisions, this is a different commission than we're accustomed to in Vegas. And we always have to keep that in mind. I know for the post-COVID fans who just started tuning into the UFC after COVID and just saw like nothing but Apex shows, you get used to consistency. But if you've been around, you already know the deal. Every town that you go to, it's going to have a little bit of a different scoring criteria for the judges. That's the sport of MMA for you. But then again, just to kind of wrap everything up here for you, this was your rapid fire breakdown, UFC Louisville. My name is Derick G, and if you haven't subscribed at this point in the program, not sure what you're doing. We will be back for the next Apex show that's going on. That is Alex Perez versus Tatsuro Taira. Catch us on our normal scheduled program Fridays. That's when the episodes drop. But again, subscribe if you hadn't. That's it from me, and until next time, folks.